Morning and welcome to the program. We're here till midday. Our number, if you'd like to join us, is 0800 80 1080. The email is Leighton at newstalkzb.co.nz. Text on 9292. I note that other hosts say text on 9292 ZBZB or ZBZB 9292. And what it really means is that you get text saying ZB 9292. They get through, but it's just unnecessary. Anyway, I don't know why I said that, except I did. Now, the word this morning is that there are rumblings afoot in the National Party. I'm actually quite surprised. I know I shouldn't be, because nothing should surprise me anymore. But I am. I'm quite surprised. Somebody said to me, as a result of this, a comment, Bill English is just not shining. He just hasn't got the mongrel in him. I pointed out to this particular individual that there are times when mongrel isn't appropriate. There are times when you just can't win. There are times when the other team has all the focus for a variety of reasons. I don't need to run through why, because we all know. And you just have to bide your time while staying on your game. So I'm surprised that this rumbling is taking place. Now, I can counter my own argument this way, that if you're going to make a change in a party's leadership, then arguably the time to do it could be when the focus is somewhere else. So that when the time comes for the replacement to put their best foot forward, which is not necessarily at the beginning, just steady as she goes, not necessarily at the beginning, that person is in place and ready to roll, or rock and roll if you prefer. Now, you can argue either of those, and maybe there's another input or two, but I'm still surprised that they're talking like this. Now, you could say this is just Barry Soper, making news for himself. No, I don't believe that. Barry's got pretty good contacts, and Barry would know that there was something that was afoot. Now, on that particular basis, I want to give you some options. Goes like this. Either no change. National didn't lose the election. They didn't. Well, you can argue this quite satisfactorily. They did not lose the election. It was corrupted in a way that they didn't win what they should have. It's an approach. And you've got to be able to accept that there are different spins on things. I argued when the election result was known, and they were going through the government forming process. I didn't argue. I pointed out to people that MMP, there's no rules. It can work any way that the players want it to work. Whoever's got the power, and this is the absurdity of it. When someone with 7% has the power, it's ridiculous. And then when that someone with 7% becomes Prime Minister, almost immediately, not quite, but almost immediately, it's on the cards, it's listed to happen, then that makes it even more stupid. Seriously. So the party that won the most votes, easily won the most votes, is the opposition party. Now, again, I'm not interested in entering into a debate over that. I'm just pointing out some of the anomalies at this particular point because we keep rolling them out. So, question, should National regroup and replace the leadership? And if they're going to, and this was my first question, well, who the hell do you think is appropriate? And I came up with three names. I'll put them to you in a second. But came up with three names. There may be more. There may be a hidden one there somewhere, but I'm not sure that there is. The three names are very simply Judith Collins, Stephen Joyce, Simon Bridges. To be the leader and or the co-leader of the National Party, if there's going to be a change of leadership. Now, I would be interested to know which of those particular options, no change, or which of those three you would be in favour of. Now, it's not a matter of personal like, just like it is with Trump. It's not a matter of personal like. It's a matter of who can do the job, who can get it done. Out of those three, I do have a personal favourite. favourite's the wrong word, a personal choice. How could it be anything other than personal anyway? But I do have a choice. But I'm told by others that I'm wrong. I'm not going to say who it is because that'll only colour the conversation. But if you've got input into this, you tell me, you tell the rest of us what you think, whether there should be a change, who should take over the leadership if there is going to be a change. I mean, you can have a party spill and Bill English could walk back in. Let's be blunt. I wouldn't mind betting, though, if they do it, that he doesn't stand, because, after all, he's been there for long enough. And if they're going to challenge him, then there is undermining afoot, and he doesn't need it. I wouldn't want it. Either you want me or you don't. And that's all there is to it. So I'd be very intrigued. We might also make comment with regard to, have we reached 100 days yet, or are we getting closer? What's the story? I don't know. I've heard it tossed around, but how are we doing at 100 days? And the answer, I know what the answer is. Fabulously. Absolutely terrifically. I mean, look at the headlines, look at the pictures, look at the commentaries, look at everything. I mean, no, I'm not going to mention that at this particular point, Mrs. Producer, because there are things to be said about that at some stage in the not-too-distant future. Not necessarily good either. The number's 0800 80 1080, email Leighton at newstalksabe.co.nz, text 9292. And then we have the Child Poverty Reduction Bill, which we will get on to in a moment. News Talk to me, it's 13 to 9. Well, let's do it. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Now, look, I rang up on the national part of the thing. I'll just keep it short and sweet. Look, Simon Bridges and Paula Benefit, they just don't seem to have the grunt, the personality grunt. Simon still sounds like a little schoolboy, and Paula, well, she just seems like someone who's been put up. But when you get to, oh God, I've forgotten her name now. What's the name of the other one? Judith Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's got a bit of mongrel in it, and you know whether she's right or wrong, she actually always sounds cool and calm when you hear her on the talkback shows with the other MPs, etc. She holds her own. She manages to bat everyone through the covers for 4 or smash them out for 6. She just seems to have, you know, a bit of cool, calm and collect about her. And as I said, it just seems to be a bit of mongrel. You know, she's not scared to get stuck in, and you know she's going to not go down.
Well, here's a question, and it's a thought along the lines that you're talking of. But Judith Collins against Jacinda Ardern in the House. Would that be two women going at each other? Now, wouldn't be the first time, but is that something that the country could cope with?
Oh, look, definitely. I mean, perhaps I'm naive. I don't look at it as two women. I mean, they're two leaders. Jacinda Ardern, I think, will probably end up being a reasonable leader. I would have liked to have seen her done a year in opposition as leader, just to get her feet under the table and get to grips with everything, because she's an unknown quantity. But her and Judith Collins, if they decide to have a little pop at each other in the House, I don't think anyone's going to think, oh, it's just two women sounding off. They're just going to be impressed with the calibre of the fight, i.e. who's doing what and saying what and what will carry the day. So,
well, while I had no intention of going down this particular path, the next question is, if Judith Collins savaged Jacinda Ardern, which she would be inclined to do wherever appropriate, according to her, if she savaged the PM, if she went for the jugular on a regular basis, could she get away with that more than a man could?
Look, again, I think it comes down to the calibre of the argument, you know, what she's savaging her over. You know, I don't necessarily know if the country thinks of it all, it's man versus woman or anything anymore. I think the country, well, I'd like to think it's moved on a little bit from that. To me, anyway, it comes down to what the argument's over and how they deal with it. So I don't think being woman on woman, or whether it was a man on a woman, I don't think it's any different. If John Key had a pop at someone, no one said, oh, it's a man having a pop at a woman. They just, you know, it was just, was he right or did he carry his argument correctly?
Yes, I think you've got to take into account, though, that in Parliament, particularly at question time, there is savaging that goes on, and it's not necessarily relevant.
No,
it's one-upsmanship, it's put-downship, it's bitching, it's all sorts of nasty stuff.
Oh, look, to be fair, and it's like a bunch of kids in a playground, really, and it's very puerile and it's one-upmanship, but in actual fact, they're all doing it in quite a enclosed environment, because I don't think many of the public go into Parliament and listen to what goes on in there. It's a bit of a talk fest. I think if you actually asked around the countryside, the general consensus would be we could do with half as many MPs and, let's cut the guts out of it. They say they want to be there to help us, do good public service, all of that sort of thing. Well, they're living like semi-royalty, some of them, and you actually wonder what some of them do for a living, because it's certainly not putting the country's best interests forward.
All right. Well said. Thank you, Richard.
No problem. Thank you.
News Talk ZB, 'tis 9 to 9. News Talk ZB, it is 7 to 9. The question that I put to my previous caller with regard to the male-female performances in Parliament, one against the other, he made a comment with regard to he hoped we'll be on that, etc. We're not. We're not. And I doubt that we ever will be. Certainly not in the foreseeable future. Let me explain what I mean. If you've got a Labour lefty Prime Minister who's a woman. Oh, we've got one. So if there is a guy on the right who is going her in the way that politicians do, then he will be tagged as a sexist. That will be exploited beyond belief by the left. It just will, because that's tactics. So getting away with it, of course, is something completely different to the way that it should be. But if that's what happens, that's what it will be. And the left is very good at it. They exploit such things, such mannerisms, such accusations, whatever. Now, if you've got two women, it's a little more difficult to do so. Obviously, you can't play the sexist card in that set of circumstances. But mark my words, if you've got a male going for Jacinda Ardern in a way that is perceived to be bullying or sexist or whatever, and that's what politicians tend to do. No, they don't tend to do it, they do it. Then that's the game that they'll play. It might not be the Prime Minister herself that takes that line, but there'll be others who'll do it on her behalf, including journalists. Nasty person, bully, sexist. And you know that I'm right. You know that's the way it is. So it's a legitimate question. Whether or not anyone wants to take any notice of it, it's another matter altogether. Now, you've got to take into account also the personalities of those involved. Judith Collins is aggressive, and in the right circumstances, it's welcome. You've got others who simply don't. You could never accuse John Key of being well, I wouldn't accuse him of being a bully in the House. He injected humour wherever possible, or what he thought was humour. Not everybody has the same sense of humour. But I don't think that anybody would ever accuse him of being a sexist because of the personality that he is. Now, I don't think you're going to get that out of Bill English either. But from some quarters you would. But if there is ever a hint of it, it will be exploited. And, of course, you can't win out of that one, can you? Unless, of course, Donald Trump. And then you can win just about every round. And if you don't win, you don't let it bother you in the slightest, and you move on. There is much to be said in the comparisons. Now, over a period of time, look at what happened to Trump. He was despised, he still is, and hated, still is, by the left. But there is a success that he has achieved at this particular point of time. Future will speak for itself. There is a success that he's achieved at this particular point of time that nobody thought he would. They just didn't. And it's frustrating the hell out of the Democrats. Male, female, whatever. And they throw everything at him, every accusation. And it's coming back to bite them big time. This 4-page memo is what they're calling it, but it's not a memo, it's a report. This 4-page report that will be released sometime, I would suggest a day or 2 or 3, later this week, after the State of the Union. Won't be released before then, obviously, but after the State of the Union, give it a day or 2, and it'll be released. And that is going to throw the real cat amongst the pigeons. And it's not just ordinary any ordinary pussycat. This thing is going to be a tiger. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. 2 to 9.
On the Leighton Smith Show. News Talk ZB.
7 after 9, a couple of comments. I'd leave it until, there shouldn't be a change, I'd leave it until next year to see how this fake mob in charge perform and how the world economies pan out. If you were in a plane heading into a huge storm, would you want someone that no one wanted steering the plane, except Winston, or a captain who has years of experience? And where was the other one? I'll put it down. I mean, I've got a bunch of them, but here it is. The point raised being any attack on Jacinda by a male would be stated as being sexist is quite valid. It would be even more massively overstated in this particular case, as not only would the attack be stated to be sexist, it would also be stated as being a deliberate attack on a pregnant woman or soon-to-be young mum. A cynic might say her pregnancy was a stroke of strategic brilliance. I made mention of something along those lines yesterday. And there is, and I don't think will I go into it now or not? There is a response to that, and it's a very logical response. That table could very easily be turned. You say, or somebody says, you can't have a go at the Prime Minister because she's expecting. Therefore, you're going to be a loser. The counter-argument to that, which is undeniable, is quite simply, if you can't stand the heat, and you know the rest of it. And it's a very good reason why, if that argument was used, please understand what I'm saying. If that argument was used, that you can't speak like that to the Prime Minister or about the Prime Minister because she is in this particular state. The answer is, in that case, she shouldn't be there. Finish. End of story. And I have a feeling that somebody will eventually, but it won't be official. Let's put it that way. It is 10 after 9. Don, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. Leighton, I just want to question Jacinda Ardern's blunt instrument that she's using to attempt to lift children out of poverty. I can't see how it's going to work. I'm not against. I'm definitely for, seeing children have everything they need to grow up in a safe and healthy environment and be well educated, but this isn't going to do it. My granddaughter, for instance, who has a young child and will have another one, I'm sure, will qualify for this. Now, she and her partner live in a nice home in the eastern suburbs which they own, drive nice cars, have 2 incomes, and they're going to get the $60 a week for their next child. How does that make sense? Just the blunt instrument of using working for families too. I can't see how that's going to work because that applies a subsidy to people's incomes in effect, and yet people's requirements vary enormously depending on where in the country they live, and the cost of living in that area. What I would like to see is people, if they do need extra money to make sure that their children need or do have school uniforms, school fees, pairs of shoes, enough food, all of those sorts of things, heating in the house, and if their benefit payments aren't enough and if working for families isn't enough, they should have to apply to the department, which used to be social welfare. I'm not sure who it is now. Wins, and go in and have an interview, put their budget on the table, and if they need more, they should be given more. but they should have to prove that that's the case.
Okay. Then there's a whole string of things I want to query you on. Is that any different? Go back to the beginning of your comment with regard to everybody getting it, even those who are well off. Is that any different to the super, where everybody gets it? So can you not apply the same principles that are applied to the superannuation apart from the fact that you paid your taxes and this was part of a political deal, but the cost of sorting through and sorting out who deserves the superannuation and who doesn't, who needs it and who doesn't, is so variable along all the lines that you mentioned, where you live in the country, how much you've got, whether you own the home that you live in, and if you own the home you live in, have you got an income to go with it? All of those things take up so much time, costing, and so difficult to answer and set the benchmarks for. Same principles apply to the child support.
They do, and I don't agree with the present form of superannuation.
Yes. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I don't agree on the present form of superannuation. That's a blunt instrument. And a lot of people are getting it unnecessarily. They should be getting a tax rebate if they opt out of it.
Well, all right. So, I mean, you've got the answer you're balanced at least. But the arguments that are utilised and have been for a long, long time with regard to super, and I don't want to get into the super debate as such, but the arguments that have been used have been dealt with, and I'm suggesting that the same principles apply to the child support. Now, having discussed that, is just handing out money the way to fix something like so-called child poverty?
No, it isn't, because we don't know how that money is going to be spent. But I do feel that people should be, if they are asking for more money, and I'm not saying they shouldn't get it, because there are circumstances in New Zealand where there's not much employment, very few opportunities. There are situations in Auckland, for instance, where there's plenty of employment, but house rentals are, sky high. So people are in difficulty, but they should have to prove their need. We can't control how they spend the money at the end of the game, but at least they should have to front up and say, these are our basic needs, this is our income, this is what rent we pay, these are our school fees, these are our doctor's bills, whatever. And we can't control the whole end game of the process.
No. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Don. News talks about 16 past 9. Numbers 0800 80 1080. This the child poverty scenario has been discussed and has been around for a long time. The Child Poverty Reduction Bill, which is Labor's contribution to this. Is it going to work or is it not? And if it's not going to work, how do you resolve the problem? Because we recognise there's a problem, not nearly as big, in my humble opinion, as what is claimed to be. But there is a problem, and it needs to be dealt with. But how do you deal with it? Labor will throw money at it. It's what they do. But is that going to resolve the problem? My question. 0800 80 1080 at 16 past 9. It is 19 after 9. Jackie, morning.
Good morning, Leighton. How are you this morning?
Very good, thank you.
Leighton, I live in the Hawke's Bay. I work as a community nurse, so I see a lot of this child poverty. I also do a lot of volunteer work, and our family have a bit of a thing where we like to do something for a stranger each day. I'm not sure what the answer is, but something that really touched me about 4 or 5 months ago before daylight savings was my husband got up for work and off he left at 6:30, and I was up and the lights were on because obviously daylight savings hadn't kicked in. Looking around, I can see about 6 neighbours Two of the neighbours had lights on. You could see it was hustle and bustle and very, very, very busy. And the three other neighbours were in the dark, the pitch dark, black as. And then the recycling truck came along, and because it was clunky, I looked around. And what I noticed, and it was quite saddening, was that the houses that didn't have the lights on obviously weren't families that were working and were getting government support, had a lot of takeaway boxes, lots of cartons of booze, and it was quite substantial amounts, you know. And we talk about this child poverty, and with my community nursing job, where I go into the homes of children to do checks and stuff, I also find the same kind of situations. There's not much food in the house. The children are inadequately dressed, etc., etc. But I do notice these recycle bins with all these booze and families smoking in that. And I'm not a judgmental person, but I think it needs to go back to education to families, you know, at a young age, because the cycle is not going to be fixed by throwing more money at people.
Well, your conclusion is correct.
That's all I can say. It's very saddening for me. Very saddening.
How you get there is really all it should be up for discussion. If you look, there's no point in cutting corners verbally here. If you are of the left, the way to resolve stuff is throw money at it. That's
Sadly.
it. It doesn't matter what it is. If there's a problem, throw more money at it. Education, child poverty, so-called, or whatever.
I have something to add to what you just said, Leighton, about throwing money at it. Being in the health sector, and I've worked in many places, there's always this thing where people say there's not enough money in the health system. Their waiting lists are skyrocket. Also within my job is actually finding the hardest people to find in society for child checks and hepatitis checks. And what I'm finding there is a lot of the money in the health dollar is actually going towards paying people like me to track people down that aren't turning up to doctor's appointments, aren't turning up to this. And a lot of money gets wasted in that sector where it could be going towards addressing people on waiting lists and stuff. So another waste of good money.
So if you were able to, if you were asked by the Prime Minister or a government minister, please, we need your help. How do we fix this? How do we address it? What would you say to them?
I suppose I would say that it's a bit like the seatbelt scenario when it first came in. Everyone threw their arms up, what's the seatbelt law? And in a couple of generations, it's just kind of the norm. I think we need to get any young people that are under 25 to be either studying, working or volunteer. There's not a dollar for them. I know that sounds harsh. Crime rate might go up, things might change, but I think in another couple of generations, people would have more self-worth, more value, feel like they've got reward in life. And because depression problems and other stuff with youth are going through the roof too, because I think they don't have value and have something to strive towards. So, yeah, I'd make young people work, study or volunteer and not give them any money unless they're doing either one of those three things. All
right, just quickly, because you work in the area, if you are giving money to resolve child poverty, where do you stop? Is there any end to it? Now, this is what I mean. So you have two kids. Not you, but somebody has some. No, I didn't mean you. I mean somebody's got two kids, and then they have a third. They're in the so-called poverty cycle. Then they have a third, and then they have a fourth, and they might even go on from there.
Generation dependency, huge.
In your area?
Huge. I think we've got the biggest child poverty rates in New Zealand, haven't we, in the Hawke's Bay, with Gisborne and Wairoa. And it's what I see in the homes is quite distressing, to be honest, Leighton, because my job is actually finding the most at need to do checks and stuff. It's very saddening, very saddening.
You want to know something? The best way to approach this is through the eyes and the help of the coalface workers like you, and not the bloody bureaucrats. Good to talk to you, Jackie. Thank you.
Hey, you have a nice day, Leighton. I love your show.
You too. Thank you. News Talks will be 25 after 9. News Talks will be 27 after 9. In my opinion, writes Noel, in my opinion, Paula Bennett doesn't cut it as Deputy Prime Minister. Judith Collins did have a hiccup over the milk deal. On the other hand, we have Stephen Joyce, who is adept at all aspects of politics. As a Minister of Finance, who better to have than Stephen as Deputy Prime Minister with Bill English, the previous Minister of Finance? Together they could form a good team. I believe that they could mould their party and perhaps bring back supporters. He is a likeable man, even though I do not vote for National. Noel, could I maybe suggest that you're using an old trick, seeing you don't vote for them, that you would like to see them set up in a way that they're not going to get the votes that they need. I'm just asking. You know, it's an old political trick that's exploited in some parts of the world in particular, that the opposition or the other party tells one party tells the other party what they should or shouldn't do with the very best of intentions, because if they do it, then it's not going to do them any good. I'm just wondering. 9:29. News talks about 28 to 10. So the Child Poverty Reduction Bill, and the Prime Minister will make a speech with regard to this today, has been met, so I'm told, so it's reported, been met by all the people who worry about child poverty with great enthusiasm. The Taxpayers Association, the Taxpayers Union, is taking a different perspective, and I'm very pleased that they are. The heading is Child Poverty Target is Barbie Doll Politics. Jordan Williams, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton.
Let's get to the Barbie doll politics in a second. This doesn't apply, by the way, it's not meant to apply to a member of Parliament. Why do you find this move that seems to be met from most quarters with enthusiasm and a sigh of relief, why do you find it objectionable?
Well, the key measure is based on median income, and measuring poverty as a percentage of median income. Now, what that means is that if overnight every New Zealander's income doubled, it would have no impact on this measure of poverty. Likewise, if you halved everyone's income under that measure, you wouldn't have any more poverty. And what this really is a inequality measure in terms of a sort of socialistic type ideology, which is why we get from these left-wing groups that have sort of construed poverty to mean a percentage of income measure as opposed to a absolute measure. That's why they're welcoming this, because of what it actually does, and the point of our media release, is what it actually does is it's a wedge or a drive towards socialism or more income redistribution.
Does that surprise you at all?
Well...
And should it?
Well, some people may not be surprised from a centre-left government, but you can't have it both ways. I mean, the Prime Minister is up saying, it should be cross-party, this is about setting goals that we can all aspire to, etc., etc. Well, okay, that's very good, but let's make sure it is actually that and focus on the material hardship measures, of which there is one of the four has that, and we welcome that, but that's what the last government was doing anyway. So if we focused on those, then I think we could all agree. That's a no-brainer. But once you introduce what is clearly driven by ideology, I think it's a bit cute for the Prime Minister to really tear into any opposition to it. And of course, as I say, the left-wing groups are going to pile in behind.
Have you seen Audrey Young's comments today in the Herald?
I've seen the headline. I haven't read the piece.
Well, essentially that if National doesn't back it, they've learnt nothing in the last few years, and there'll be a bunch of losers, because this is something that simply must be backed.
Well, that's the problem with something like this. Until you read into the detail, it's very hard to sort of take it on. I mean, we sort of see that as a role of groups like the Taxpayers Union to be a little bit more of the vocal critic or the perhaps contrarian in some cases. But we've sort of looked a little bit deeper into this and a bit concerned. I mean, the headline politics of this is very good, because, we New Zealanders supported Jacinda Ardern to tackle poverty. Here she is, with the headlines, I'm tackling poverty. It's not until you sort of scratch the surface and look into the detail that you actually realise what's going on. And it will be tough for National to take this on. We think they should, though, and otherwise they're simply drifting to the left.
All right, quote from you: the saddest thing about these proposals is they suggest Labor's claimed concern for kids in hardship was fake all along. Their concern for kids in hardship was fake all along. Even I've got a bit of trouble coping with that.
Well, the best way to help help the most vulnerable in our society is to grow the pie. And there's no mention here of economic growth, of getting people off welfare, which of course was one of the measures that the last government had. Productivity, employment, and entrepreneurship. That is the way we assist the most vulnerable over the longer term. And there's just no measures or mentions of any of those things. It is classic ideology, these announcements, and we're holding them to account on it.
All right, so tell me this. Where should this policy put the brakes on? For instance, you've got, and I was talking about this a moment ago, you've got people who are, shall we say, irresponsible, or people who have no idea, or whatever tag you want to put on it, who have more kids than they should have, more kids they can afford. The response generally I've found over a period of time is, well, it's their right to have as many kids as they want. That's from some quarters. Now, if that's the case, then it's simply a matter of this present government's approach is to keep giving them more money. But if either you do that, or you create a scenario where you don't do that, but this isn't socialist policy.
Well, time will tell. We're in the early stages of this government. We're all trying to find our feet and see what the lie of the land is. But I mean, as I say, this is very good soundbite style politics. But our point of view is, like in business, if you measure it, it will happen. That becomes your focus. And the trouble is that what this government is doing is replacing good measures, for example, the number of people dependent on a benefit, and replacing it with what are ideologically driven measures under this heading of poverty.
All right. The Barbie doll politics. Explain.
Oh, well, this is just this is a classic example of why this is just headline grabbing. In the legislation, they've got a clause that will require governments, when setting these targets, to consult with children. Now, that is, by definition, Barbie doll politics. There is a real trend in Wellington now, even sort of in naming ministries. You have ministers setting up these advisory groups of kids in the young teens to apparently advise on public policy. I think it's time to call this stuff out for what it is. It's just window dressing or good photos for the minister with young people. We've labelled it Barbie doll politics. Kids don't understand the opportunity costs. I mean, what kid doesn't say, yes, I'll have that, and that, yes to all? Politics should be more mature than having, we pay cabinet ministers a couple of $100,000 a year. We shouldn't be letting them get away with this sort of nonsense of giving kids cell phones to turn up in Wellington, flying them down here for talk hooey on what are actually important decisions.
Is that actually in progress?
Yeah, well, we've seen it. I'll give you an example. The Ministry of, it's had so many name changes, I don't think of the name, but it's now the Ministry of Children. A few weeks ago, it was the Ministry of Vulnerable Children. We inquired as to why they needed to spend $400,000 to make that change to make the change in the name, and the minister said, "Oh, well, this is what kids were demanding." Well, what kids were demanding was just it was a Facebook group of people they'd previously brought to Wellington to advise about this ministry, and there was a single comment about someone, why have they got the word vulnerable in the name? And this stuff is just madness, and it costs real money.
Indeed. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leighton.
Jordan Williams from the Taxpayers Union. You either agree or disagree. I'd prefer it if you agreed, because it's common sense. 19 to 10, News Talk ZB. 17 to 10. Leighton, there's an old story, quote, "My advertising agency tells me that half the money I spend on advertising is wasted, but they can't tell me which half. I suspect this applies to most government agencies and local authorities." Alan, I've got to say congratulations. Murray, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Leighton. Just this thing regarding, trying to eliminate the poor with children. I live in the far north, and I'll tell you what, I don't believe it's a problem about money. It's about, social dysfunction. I mean, up here, you can't believe it. You've got mothers with 6 children, solos, that is. They get plenty of money, but, the children just aren't cared for properly. And as Bill English said yesterday on the TV, it's really all about social dysfunction.
You're the first person to actually articulate that this morning. But I assumed that most people recognise that, and that the whole approach to poverty that's being taken at this point of time by the present government is avoiding and abating that fact completely. They don't want to know about it.
Yep, well, all I want to do is fix it with money. She will not fix it with money, and personally, I believe in a year or two's time, nothing will have changed.
It won't.
Just the same.
I'm telling you, you're correct.
I mean, the sad thing is, my wife, she says, a lot of these people have got no housekeeping skills. Their houses are, dreadfully looked after. They're just pigsties, some of them. I mean, my daughter took a dog back to a house recently, or the other day. My daughter lives in Auckland, but this little dog belonged to a property. She took it over to them and knocked it on the door, and she said, "Dad, the place stunk like fish, rotten fish." And this is what the children are being brought up in. No money in the world will solve that problem unless the solo parent, or dual parents for that matter, are educated. But of course, they haven't been brought up in any different situation themselves. It's just, carrying on year after year, or, family after family. And until there's some educational thing carried on. Look, up here, we have so many social setups that are running around in brand new four-wheel drive or SUV vehicles, supposedly going to the houses of all these people to try and straighten out their social issues. Nothing's happening. But the only thing is, it's a job creation situation. The people all got a job. As I say, they're all running around in late model SUVs, and supposedly, popping out to Billy Joe's, she's got an issue, so they pop out and try and solve it. They don't solve a thing.
Mm.
And I can just see that they have their Monday morning meetings around the table, and right, what are we going to do this week? Right, we're going to concentrate on certain issues in the community. But they don't solve it. They are purely the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, really.
Mm. Very good.
Anyway,
okay.
until we solve the social thing, it won't happen.
Correct. Thank you, Murray.
Okay, thanks, mate.
News Talk to me, it's 12 to 10. It appears that I've got to start from scratch every time, there's a cycle. And subjects come around on the cycle constantly. It's repetitive. It seems that I've got to start from scratch every time we revisit something. Leighton, I'm quite surprised that you appear not to know that child poverty is measured in New Zealand entirely on a percentage basis, regardless of personal income. Essentially, that's correct. But there's sometimes you just got to assume that people know things. There are many aspects to this that I get tired of repetition. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just got to do it. 12 to 10. News Talk ZB. News Talk's about 9 to 10. Danielle, good morning.
Hi there. First-time caller. Listened to the show for years and years.
Thank you.
Today I'm compelled to call you because I think ultimately the issue that we have in our society, from my own observations and living amongst it all, is actually self-worth at the end of the day. Without self-worth, you don't feel worthy to take on board these programs that are available. I do not think they're a waste of time at all. And it is hard being a part-time parent, part-time working parent, raising children, especially on your own, with the peer pressure of society.
Your circumstances?
I am a part-time parent. I have 3 children I raise on my own. with very unsupporting a father and ex-partners. And ultimately what I've learnt in my 35 years of age is it's the self-worth that you have to feel like you're a valid and contributing member in our society, regardless of who you are and what you do, because everything coincidentally fits in to life's path as it does in the end. Sorry, I'm a little bit anxious.
A little bit what?
A little bit anxious.
No, let's. I want to spend some time with you.
Right.
Because some of the things that you've said I agree with, others I want to discuss.
Right.
I agree with you on the self-worth.
Yes.
If you feel like you're worthless, then you've got nothing going for you. I mean, it's really a matter of self-esteem, if you want to call it that. It's whatever you want to call it.
The education I feel is lacking.
Which education?
The education is lacking in our society, where we're not educating people on where they are valid as people, giving them the motivation and the positive affirmations to be someone and something, to be anything you want. I'm a generational, my mother's mother was on a benefit, my mother was on a benefit, I was on a benefit for a very long time until I got part-time work. I feel broken that cycle. For my children, I tell them I have to go to work. This is it. You have to have your share in the household to help this run. You girls, I don't want to see you slobbing around on your tablets and devices unless you're, learning something, and stop wasting that time with stuff, not watching things that aren't appropriate for education. It's about being there for your kids and telling your kids that they're going to be whatever they want to be, and as long as they're happy and good people and trustful and, worthy citizens, really, those are the things that are lacking amongst our society.
Danielle, question.
Mm-hmm.
With the generational aspect of this that you just mentioned,
yes.
Where and how did you develop the things that you just verbaled to us, the attitude?
I call myself a self-educated person, so I've learned a lot from my parents' mistakes. I have looked at what they've done and thought, I don't want to do that. But as I said, up until the age of probably 32, I had very little self-worth. I now feel quite empowered that I can spot an egotistical characteristic of a person, which quite often I'm attracted to, which then leads to my downfall. Those sort of things. A lot of it is counselling, your 6 free sessions you get through the doctors as well. I've done that a few times. I have taken on board self-learning through the Tiwānanga education and just getting myself out there to, surely there's more to life than sitting at home watching Emmerdale every day. Something
made you come to this realisation, as opposed to those who continue drifting.
I think that's what it is, ultimately, is probably the counselling I've done and having really good mentors and just looking to people for the good and what they have to offer and being really quick to weed out the people that are quite toxic to my lifestyle.
3 kids.
Yeah.
How many partners? How many fathers?
I've had one father and one 5.5-year relationship after that.
So have the kids all got the same father?
Yes. Yeah.
Were you married?
No.
When did he disappear?
About 7 years ago. So my oldest daughter is 14.
Why did he disappear?
I lived in a violent and abusive relationship, and I had a flashback of being 4 years old and an incident occurring with my mother, and me thinking and looking at my children and realising that was a cycle I was stuck in. I didn't know any better. I didn't know where to get help. I had no support. I had a mental breakdown and I just left. That was it, basically.
But now you feel a lot different.
Yeah, I do.
Is this rubbing off on the kids?
I feel it is. My ultimate goal now is to make sure that they have people in their lives that respect them and encourage them to be positive people. And that's my role, to teach them what's right and wrong.
Do they know that you have expectations?
Probably not as such. I don't say I have expectations of you. I tell them that, we uphold our family name, and whatever any of us do as a family, that affects everyone. We have quite often family meetings. The kids laugh when we take minutes and stuff, but it's quite a positive way to encourage communication and voice everyone's concerns about whatever somebody's done and how that affects our family.
Is that just the four of you, or is there the...
I have a lot of friends now. I keep everyone in the friend bracket for my own personal safety and probably baggage and whatnot. But, for the first time in my life, I feel empowered to take control and lead the way for a brighter future for all of us.
I think you're to be congratulated. In fact, I know you are to be congratulated. There is something that if I can find it, will be upcoming in the program in the not too distant future. So I hope you can keep listening. But put expectations in their lives. You expect them to achieve things. You expect them to do well at school, and that will embed itself in them if you approach it that way. Appreciate the call.
On News Talk ZB.
0800 80 1080. Email is Leighton at newstalkzb.co.nz, and you can text on 9292. I've spent virtually the entire news break searching for what I made mention of before, and I've been through a pile of papers, a very large one. You think I can find it? I know where I can get it eventually. I know where it came from, but I thought I'd be able to find it easier than this, but I'm going to keep at it, Danielle. I think from memory it would be good, and you'd be interested in hearing it. Here's another topic: why we can't let cynics, left or right, ruin university. At the moment, it's the left that's doing it. We need a bit of a swing. The conversation I had with Danielle was rewarding. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Why? Well, if you need me to explain it, then there's no point in me trying to explain it. Is the only way I can put it. But it gave me enormous pleasure. Seriously. It is 9 after 10. Tony, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Leighton. I didn't realise, Leighton, that you have to give a year's notice to ZB before you leave the station. But anyway,
why did you say that?
Because I thought you were leaving. I thought it was all over, bar the shouting, and that Kerry was taking your place. And then I hear you're still on the airwaves.
Well, you weren't listening. You weren't paying attention at the time. It was a 12-month situation, and no, let's just say that. I'll say it once more, and I'm never going to say it again. That's the way this organisation operates. They've done it before. They did it with Holmes and Hosking. That was a 2-year announcement. They've done it for the reasons of continuation and smoothness and what have you from a number of different angles. And it wasn't me giving 12 months' notice, it was them announcing it. Anyway.
Right, fair enough. Now, I was with my osteopath this morning, and he's just come back from Uganda. His brother-in-law is a member of the UN in Uganda. He's a Kiwi, involved with logistics and so on. And apparently in Uganda, at one stage, 67% of the population had AIDS. And that's been, through education, that's been cut back down to about 15%. So, when you think of the problems that we have in New Zealand versus some of the problems that exist in these African countries, it's quite mind-boggling.
Well, in a way, that situation with AIDS was self-resolving, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was a change in mindset. It was
unquestionably, but because of the death rate, of course, once the education took a foothold, then it eliminated itself, or it hasn't eliminated, but it reduced itself dramatically. I mean, that's just the way that it works. But you're quite right. But if it was a disease that kept people didn't die from, but kept them sick, then it would still be a major issue.
And I think, poverty obviously breeds disease, which is lack of ease, isn't it? And I'm just wondering, it's easy for me to say it, but nothing is impossible. These things can be resolved. And I agree with others. I don't think it's just about throwing money at the situation either. I think it is a deep issue that needs to be resolved over quite a long period of time.
Yes, it will take a period of time. And tell me what you believe are the hiccups in that.
Well, I think that I've got 2 teenage children, and I'm a body born in the 50s. What's that called? A baby boomer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a baby boomer. So I'm a very hard worker. Sometimes the teenagers don't take that on board. I think they try to be a bit more smart than I am, and less hardworking, a lazy smartness, if you like. So it's this generational thing. I think. I don't think you can necessarily lead by example. The next generation are sort of working it out for themselves, how they're going to operate.
I think that example is still necessary.
Well, I know, but it's not necessarily the panacea. The youth have to somehow understand that hard, work ethic is essential, as well as being smart.
Correct.
So, how they do it, I think it's about, Leighton, the old-fashioned goal setting. Is if you have some objectives in mind, short, really short, maybe medium, and a few long-term objectives, and have them at your heart, at your core, well, that certainly keeps you busy. It keeps you preoccupied. I think one of the things my children do is they work during the holidays. And we're very good at that. Some of our employers, especially supermarket chains, very good at hiring young people and keep them off the streets and get them working and engaging with staff and engaging with customers and learning about how to interact.
All of the above.
All the above, yeah.
But see, this is the role of parents, first and foremost, is to A, set examples, B, impose on their kids the values that they want those kids to grow up with, and hopefully they're the right values. And I don't think I need to outline what the right values are. You've already done that reasonably well. So you bring your kids up with those things. I've never forgotten what somebody I know very well said to me about their parents and growing up. Our parents had expectations of us, and we knew it.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're being told, just find something you love doing and do it. That's not an expectation. That's a lifestyle.
Leighton?
Yes.
My son, the subjects he's doing at school this year are English, career studies, physical education, media studies, and furniture making. He's in the 7th form at Auckland Grammar, and those are the subjects he's taking. Quite far removed from the subjects I took when I was at school.
I reckon. And what's he going to do?
Well, he's got quite a few choices based on those subjects. I think he's going to probably do, I hope, a gap year next year where he does tutors worldwide and he actually travels abroad and he can teach cricket and things like that, coach cricket too, and teach some English and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that year abroad is really phenomenal for education as well, you know, away from family and friends.
Well, it's an introduction to life. It's standing on your own and making that break and learning, hopefully.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, Tony. Thank you. News Talks about 17 after 10. Number 0800 80 1080. Email Leighton at newstalksab.co.nz. And you can text on 9292. Quick note from Jacqueline, who says, we were wanted. Many of the children born now are not wanted. Let's assume that she's correct. And she is. It's just a matter of to what degree. Start with the 50s. And progress forward to now. Between the 50s and now, at what point did we become unhinged so that people were having kids they didn't want? And why? There's got to be a reason. Can I just make a comment on the speaker? New Zealand's no longer a religious country. Like he'd have a clue. 21 past 10. Morris, good morning.
Yeah, g'day, mate. You know, I was thinking this, and I think with kids, it's very hard for them now, because your kids always want to follow in the footsteps of their parents.
Not always.
Yeah. You know, they sort of ask you what you do and what you didn't. And I did a college degree, accounting and marketing. And my daughter said, I'll go and do that at university. I said, well, no, what's your passion? And I said, in 20 years' time, you've got to look at where the future's going to be. And I think this is the biggest thing with children today. It's evolving. Nowadays we're going through that burst of evolution in the sense of technology and all the rest of it. But it's like the 1930s and 40s. Things are developing.
Mm.
And she says, well, I said, so what's your passion? And she's always, her twin sister wanted to become a doctor since she was a kid, and so she went and did a medical degree. And her passion was always in the sciences. So she'd gone off and done that, and she's a research scientist down in the UK. And you look at it, and my son was always doofing around with computers, and so he did all that. But originally, the girls always sort of thought, well, they were going to do a commerce degree because that's what would make me happy. You've got to do what makes you happy. And I think the biggest thing with us and children is that we try and influence them too much. I think you've got to let them make their own mind, right?
I think, yeah. Does it not depend on the personalities involved, both the parent and the child, as to how much influence and how much is too much and how much is not enough?
Yeah. You see, well, I'm very lucky. Their mother is 100% control freak, and I just let them do their own thing, so that you get a balance in the middle. And they try and please all parties, which is, I don't think that's a good thing. And so over the years, they've always come out with an even balance, an even keel, which I think is really, really important. And I think that when it come down to education, they were looking at traditional things. And I said, well, you've got to look at where the future's going to be. And it's even like my daughter, she went and did a medical degree, and now she's moved into orthopaedic surgery.
Your daughter is now an orthopaedic surgeon?
Well, she's in her second year of the internship.
Okay.
Yeah, of that. She's cutting people up. But anyway, and I said, well, what made you come to that conclusion? Everyone's going to have hips and that, and if I go into a private practice, there's a long-term future there. And she'd analyse everything.
Well, she's used her brains in that, but is there an enjoyment in it for her?
Oh, I think yes, she enjoys it because she's like she said to me, nothing's ever the same. Even the theatres aren't the same, but your team around you is the same, and so she does enjoy it, and she likes a challenge. And it's like she said, you can do this for a period of time, and then you can change, and you can. One thing about surgery, she once into that, you can actually change around. You don't have to stay the same thing your whole life. You can go and re-educate yourself and change. And I thought, well, that's good on you. But I think it's important for kids. It's whatever makes them happy.
Well, I think the happiness aspect of it's overrated.
Yeah. You see, I always was brought up on a farm, wanted to be a farmer. That's what made me happy. And then one day I thought, coming from a small town, I thought I wanted to leave the small town. So I still went back to what made me happy. I went commercial fishing instead, and I could travel to a city and still fish out of Nelson. Mm-hmm. And that's what made me happy. And I think the thing is that some of us want to do certain things, and it's like I've got a younger son now, and he wants to be a builder. And I said, as long as it makes you happy. You know, and he started the school holidays working over the holiday period. And he come back and said, I don't really want to be a builder. Because he realised that getting out of bed at 6 in the morning, stuck outside in the sun and working all day, he said, but he'd been listening to all the stuff, how much money you can make and all that. Right. And he comes to the conclusion that that's not really him.
Okay. I've got to take my break. But when I said the happiness thing is overrated, I meant it to a degree. You've got to find... Look, first of all, you've got to earn a living. That's first and foremost. You're not going to be very happy if you're making a miserable income and you can't do the things that you want to do. My suggestion has always been think ahead as to where you want to be and how much you want to be earning to do the things that you want to do in life given a certain age. That's for a start. Then find something that is agreeable with you, and you never know how much happiness, to use the word, you're going to find in it, and you might find plenty. Happiness is a state of mind, not necessarily the result of something. And I appreciate it, Morris. Good conversation. 10:27. News Talk ZB. Now to Suna Pilates for the first time this year in Takapuna. Susie Cleland, good morning. I'm missing you.
Good morning. I'm missing you too, but I love hearing happiness is a state of mind. I believe that 100%.
Well, I can say with total genuineness, and I've said it many times, that walking out of your Pilates studio, I'm always feeling great. Always. Every single time. Now, what about starting something new?
Look, people always want to set New Year's resolutions, and they want to have the body they've always wanted, and they want to feel fit, and overall these days people want to be healthy. And I just wanted to talk to some of your lovely listeners.
Suze, you're not talking into the phone straight.
Oh, can you hear me now?
That's better.
I talked to some of your lovely listeners yesterday at the studio, and the biggest thing people need to think about if you want to start something new and you want to get fit and you want to get healthy, think of why you want to. Do you want to be a better grandparent, a better parent? Do you want to not be a burden on anyone? Do you want to wake up feeling good in the morning? Build a list as long as you can and have such a strong purpose that nothing can stop you getting it. Come in and see us, and we will give you a deal, and we will look after you and help you get what you want and help you get happy.
Indeed. Happiness is a reward for doing something well. It's not a state of mind that you're in all the time.
It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, there are stories of people who were in camps in the war who were treated abysmally, and they still write books about the amazing camaraderie they had and the happy times living in the squalor.
Boy, have I ever got a book for you, and I'll bring it to you next time I come. Where are you?
Thank you. Number 1, Barry's Point Road in Takapuna, right upstairs from IE.
News Talk to me 29 after 10. I'm running a little late. I think I might have found, Danielle, the piece that I was looking for. I think it's not, I've had a quick look at it, it's not giving me what I want, but I can't find anything else. I think this must be it. So, we'll have a look at it very shortly. News Talk to me 27 to 11. I'm still not sure that this is what I was looking for. I know that sounds a bit flaky, but I had something else in mind, and I'm not sure that this gives it to me. Here's my frustration. And I'm going to let them know. I subscribe to The Australian. And I know that what I'm looking for was, I've got a massive pile of printouts here that I did from over the vacation. And I can't find it in there. There is no, and I found this yesterday, there is, on the Australian website, there is no search availability. There used to be, but it's not there. It's disappeared. How on earth can they do that? Well, they've done it. but I will let them know my feelings about it. You know what I'm talking about. You go to a newspaper site and it's got search. And you type in what you're looking for, keywords, and hopefully come up with it. It's gone. And I'm paying for this. I want my money back, or part of it. The battle of ideas is being lost in our classrooms. This is written by Kevin Donnelly, who's a senior research fellow at the Australian Catholic University, and the author of Dumbing Down, now available on Amazon. He says, John Howard, when Prime Minister, referred to the battle of ideas as a key element in the contest between parties of different political persuasions. The battle of ideas. And proven by the ongoing attacks on the war record of Robert Menzies and Labour's Paul Keating, it's clear the battle continues. The 2016 National Assessment Program for Civics and Citizenship, the survey released last month, provides another illustration of the cultural left's intention to impose its politically correct agenda. Education once involved teaching students what Matthew Arnold described as the best that has been thought and said. The ideal, as noted... Oh, hang on. Let me go back. Let me back up. Matthew Arnold described as the best that has been thought and said, incorporating the academic disciplines and taught in an objective and impartial way. The ideal, as noted by T.S. Eliot, is on inculcating truth and wisdom. And this liberal view of education is in opposition to a utilitarian approach, or one where the focus is in indoctrinating students by imposing an ideological worldview of the left or the right. That's the approach that we should be utilising, but we don't anymore. And the first thing to note about the survey is that instead of important content, the focus is on what are described as cognitive processes, affective processes, and civics and citizenship participation. As a result, while one of the issues surveyed related to the importance of learning about history and political institutions, the other topics included participating in peaceful protests, participating in activities that benefit the local community, promoting human rights, protecting the environment, and making personal efforts to protect natural resources. This is all in the school system. Not unexpectedly, given the ubiquitous presence of, then they get into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and society, and it doesn't matter to us. Judged by the results of the survey, it's clear how successful the cultural left has been in taking control of the school curriculum and indoctrinating primary and secondary students with its ideological worldview. That's all that matters to us. I don't think that's what if what I was looking for is in there, it's further down, I'm not going to go investigating. But bottom line is that the education system, I don't believe, you tell me if you think I'm wrong, because I'd love to be wrong, but I do not believe the education system, either here or across the Tasman, is teaching kids the right things or the right approach to life. It's just not doing it. And it's pretty simple. As that list of things that, about natural resources and climate and all that sort of stuff, breaking it down into propaganda issues is indicative. That's replaced the teaching of the history of things, the straight up the middle approach. I don't mind that it's not necessarily teaching the way or the conclusions that I've come to, but is instead teaching not the ability to sort it out for yourself, but indoctrination. And that's what we've got more of now than we've ever had before. And it's damaging kids. It's taking away from them the opportunities that they can provide for themselves over the period of their education, of achievement, of learning, of, discovering where they want to be, where they want to go, and not just latching on to something that's, I want to do that because, I want to be a television star. I want to do media studies because, you get to be famous. or whatever it might be. 21 to 11, News Talk Sydney. I was just glancing through this particular column by Kevin Donnelly, and I came across toward the end a couple of lines that I'm going to quote you in a second. But if you're a regular listener, you'll know that I've got a thing about the state of my birth, Victoria, which has fallen into the hands of the hard left, and they're just screwing it badly, and it's very, very damaging. Here is a prime example of what I'm talking about. Quoting from this article. Education, as argued by former Victorian Premier Joan Kirner, must be, quote, part of the socialist struggle for equality, participation and social change, rather than an instrument of the capitalist system. That's the, fill in your own adjective, ex-Premier of Victoria, in charge of the education system. Morning, Barry.
Good morning, Leighton. I haven't spoken to you before, but I was just listening to your show as I do on a regular basis, and thought I'd phone up. Now, this is to do with the topic of education. It may be hopefully not too far afield. I was not going to phone up and discuss just college and high school, but it's more like our education system in the wider sense, like even at the universities. Like I've worked with people at the universities on various topics and ventures, and it seems to be their hands are tied a lot of the time of what they're allowed to research. It's like they're watched very closely, and so when you're mentioning things about, going outside the norm and to explore new avenues, it goes a lot further than just your standard basic education. It goes right up to the top echelons of our the way we structure our society. Like many professors, without naming who they are, from a variety of universities within New Zealand, have basically confessed to me that their hands are tied, and when they start researching, which to them seems an advantage of to go this direction, they can also get their and some of them have even had their salaries withheld, like delayed and being paid, but when the pressure comes on not to go down that path. So to look at that may be going too far outside of what you were focusing on, but that was maybe as a hint of, or focusing on the wider issue at hand, is that to have freedom to explore new avenues, like freedom of thought, we like to encourage our country that we think like that, but in reality, it's actually nipped in the bud.
So let me let me just nail this. You're talking about university in New Zealand.
Professors, yes.
And you're saying that you're aware of some of them being in a position where they haven't been paid, or their salary's been withheld, was your term.
One particular chap in particular, a professor who was not an associate professor, but the head of the department, had discovered something that was outside what is taught in physics. It's outside the area, so it was basically breaking the laws of physics. Pressure came upon him just to be quiet, and when he didn't want to be quiet, his salary was withheld and he couldn't pay his mortgage or look after his kids. So what I'm saying is the status quo, regardless if it's left or right, I mean, I'm not really concerned about that in this conversation, but the status quo seems to be more important than maintaining that than actually discovering great new ideas. Sometimes new ideas come out because it agrees with where we're going. But if it doesn't agree with what is deemed as the direction we're going, covert pressure is applied to halt that direction. I asked why he thought that was, and he could only give his opinion. He wouldn't know for sure, but
I know the answer.
Yes, I think I do too. He believed it was the vested interests inside the university that were donations, and that was against those.
Exactly. It's all to do with what's the term I want? It's all to do with. I can't finger the term that I want to use, but vested interest.
Well, yeah, that's the best way of putting it. And so the only reason I brought this up is because when we talk about our kids or grandkids and their choices of education and what they should be taught, it actually goes a lot further. And in some ways, I mean, I'm not speaking conspiracy theories because I don't really believe in them, but what they teach in school does actually suit the vested interests as well. Like, they don't teach kids about financial matters at school, how to balance a checkbook or how to avoid paying tax or...
Well, kids wouldn't know what a checkbook is anymore.
Islands, but because it wouldn't suit the vested interests. They want a whole nation of people who pay tax and can't avoid paying it because they don't know any better. Saying that, same at the universities. If someone creates, we'll just mention something, an energy system, we'll mention that because that was quite green and it was going the right direction, all fine and good. But if the system particularly breaks the understandable or accepted laws of physics that was taught, no one seems to be interested because it opens all these possibilities of we're teaching all the kids the wrong information, and people get concerned.
Well, look at it this way. You mentioned donations.
Yes.
And yes, that's a part of it. Because if you're a professor who's come up with something that deserves to be followed, but it would undermine the interests of those who are making donations, I mean that speaks for itself. But then you've got the career investments as well. Those who have spent their lives pursuing a particular aspect of physics, suddenly being alerted to the fact that they might be wrong and their whole reputation is at stake here.
Yes, I realise this. They're actually going to hang on to it because their reputations and their career is at stake, regardless if it's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting themselves first rather than advancing science, which is a pity. But
what's the greatest category currently of science that is affected by that?
Well, going on what I've seen, it would be an energy creation.
No. But associated. Climate science.
Oh, well, that's actually to do with this because it actually is, from what I've seen, is 100% carbon-free as far as waste products or anything. But because of other factors of it, because, it breaks the laws of accepted physics that we know, it has to be shelved and it doesn't want to come to public attention. And I said, well, what do you do? There's nothing we can do. The pressure comes on and you're on your own and you feel defenceless and you feel intimidated. So I just thought I'd mention that because it goes further than just basic school, college, etc. It goes right up to the top academics of our world, is that the status quo needs to be, I don't believe so, but it needs to be maintained in various groups' eyes. And they will sacrifice progress in the name of retaining control, I suppose. And that's all I wanted to say, Leighton. Right. I just wanted to put my 2 cents
Well
in.
said. You hang up and then go straight back to the radio because you're going to want to hear what I'm about to quote.
Okay, cheers. Thank you, Leighton.
Right after the break. News Talks will be 11 to 11.
Retirement your way at Park Lane.
Looking after the maintenance.
News Talks will be at 8 to 11. You wouldn't believe it, but I found the article that I was long searching for. I didn't find it. It found me, as it happens. And you wonder how that can be? Well, it just did. It just appeared. Talking to my previous caller, he's going to love this. Forget old dead white men and their cobwebby equations and quaint experiments. Science is about to get the full feminist, social justice, post-colonialist makeover. If you care about science and our ability to answer questions, steward public policy, and improve public safety, then you must care about the people who make up the scientific community. Women, pregnant women, people of colour, immigrants, refugees, disabled or LGBTQ. Scientists are a diverse, intersectional galaxy of identities, histories and expertise. To advocate for science requires us to address and dismantle institutional misogyny and racism. Anything less is morally disingenuous. Science should be a feminist institution. But we haven't got there yet. We have been silenced by a culture that tells us to divest ourselves from ourselves for the sake of apolitical objectivity. Everywhere in our society, but doubly so in science, we are told to remain calm, play nice, and keep our heads down. As if our silence and complicity, indeed our docility, will be rewarded. This is a lie. There is no reward for acquiescence, only subjugation. We deserve better and will get it. The feminist reckoning is here and it's coming for science. If you never believed there is a war out there, then that should pretty much convince you that there is. Cancel the Enlightenment. Science is to become a feminist institution. There's more, but you get the picture. Now, from Bruce, I know a young Asian doctor working in the hospital as a consultant at age 28. He studied like there was no tomorrow to get there. He now drives a top-of-the-range Maserati and owns a nice home in central Auckland at the age of 28. I also know a solo parent family with 4 children. One child, teenage, ready for university, wishes to be a doctor. Our company and the doctor referred above would support that teenager in their career choice as a social service. The family knows the Asian doctor referred above. The mother insists the child cannot be a doctor as she sees welfare sets limitations for all concerned. Welfare is teaching families to become and be what they are. They are behavioural consequences due to the welfare system and low-income economy approaches adopted by the government. Bruce, I'm missing something here. Maybe it was the way I read it. I hadn't pre-read it. So Bruce knows an Asian doctor working in a hospital as a consultant, aged 28. Studied like no tomorrow, drives top-of-the-range Maserati and owns a nice home in central Auckland. Then there is the solo parent family with 4 kids. One child that's ready for university wants to become a doctor. Our company, and I see what that company is, but I don't know what it does. I see it from the email address. Our company and the doctor above would support that teenager in their career choice as a social service. In other words, they're willing to fund that kid's education. The family knows the Asian doctor. But the solo parent, the mother, insists the child can't be a doctor as she sees welfare sets limitations for all concerned. I don't understand that. Bruce, can you fill me in, please? Because this is important. Welfare, then he says, makes a statement, welfare is teaching families to become and be what they are. There are behavioural consequences due to the welfare system and low-income economy approaches adopted by government. That I understand. But can you flesh that out for me, please, mate? I would be very grateful if you did. Now, the State of the Union address is on at 3 p.m. New Zealand time this afternoon. I don't know whether I'm going to watch it or not. It depends whether I've got the time at the time. But it will be a good watch. It'll be a good watch because it'll be a good study of where, of people's behaviour. The particular people in particular. Particular people in particular. Namely American politicians. Namely the Democrats. You know how it works. President gets up there and makes statements. There are lots and lots of applause lines written into it. Where the party of the incumbent president will stand up and applaud for sometimes for minutes on end. It's happened. Whereas the other lot, whoever they may be, will sit there on their hands. Or they might. That's about it. This is going to be fascinating. I think I'm talking myself into watching it. This is going to be fascinating because of the of everything that's gone before in the last 2 years, in the lead up to the presidential election and in the 12 months since. So it's going to be interesting to see what he talks about, what he says, what's in the speech, how his delivery is. But I think we know that's fairly flat and boring. He's not the greatest speechmaker on the planet. but that's not so important as to what is being said. And there'll be great discussion on a program tomorrow.
News Talk ZB.
0800 80 1080. Email is Leighton at newstalkzb.co.nz. You can text on 9292. I'm now overloaded with discussion matter, correspondence and discussion matter with regard to what has been the centre of discussion for the last hour or so. And having found the article, well, it found me, as I said, it's entitled "The Have a Go Spirit is Kept Out of Most Classrooms." Now, keep in mind, it's an Australian article, but there is a connection between the two. I am a recently retired secondary school teacher, writes Brian. We presently have a flawed system where 9 out of 10 students pass the NCEA test. The pass bar has been lowered gradually over the years. This is not life's reality and sets up many for disappointment. This everyone wins the prize approach to learning is necessary for learning institutions as they get paid for bums on seats. Recently retired. I've been sent also an article with regard to the Victorian Association for the Teaching of English. Wait till you hear this. But first, the comment that leads into this from Jim, who sent it to me. The late Graham Hunt, ex-National Business Review editor-at-large, who among his many books wrote Spies and Revolutionaries, told Larry Williams he regarded the PPTA as the last bastion of communism in New Zealand. How long before this method arrives here? With the current government's blessing. Now, I'm not going to read you this whole article, it's too long. We don't need it. But the Victorian Association for the Teaching of English convened in Melbourne for its annual conference entitled Now Gods Stand Up for Bastards, which is a direct quote from King Lear. Given that the symposium had been designed by English teachers, for English teachers, referencing the bard in this case was entirely fitting. However, it was also completely and utterly misleading. Whatever you do, you listening, Mrs. Producer? Whatever you do, don't make the mistake of thinking that Shakespeare and his works was one of the main focuses of the conference. In fact, where he is mentioned, which is just once, it's in the context of Mean Girls and The Dark Knight. 2 movies. No, the purpose of the conference, as admitted by the president of VATE, the Victorian Association for Teaching of English, the week before, was to, ready? Launch a program of social justice featuring keynote speakers such as Van Badham, a left-wing activist and self-proclaimed communist, Shen Narasimha, sounds like Sri Lanka to me, actually, Human Rights Campaign Director at Get Up, which is, if you don't know, is a very hardcore leftist activist group, Van T. Rudd, a visual artist who creates murals for radical trade unions and various social justice movements, and Gillian Triggs, former president of the Australian Human Rights Commission. And it cost us $70,000. That was the Victorian Association for Teaching English and the speakers they had. That's what it was all about. And you wonder why we've got problems? Now, I know it's Victoria. I know it's Melbourne. There are links, and these people work together. They feed off each other. David, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. Right, let's take you off hands-free. Right, we're there.
Good.
Okay now? Right. So,
talk to me.
Beware of your last caller.
I'm sorry, say about the last caller?
I was hanging off reword at him, about this alternative energy thing that he was talking about.
Yes.
That's actually an area that I'm doing some work in. I'm going to file a patent soon.
Well, let me see if I have any advance from him. Yes, he has advanced. You want to hear it?
Yeah, go.
He says, thank you, fleshed out as follows for clarification as requested. The solo mum has a fixed perception that children dependent on WINS welfare systems have limited career choices. It is incomprehensible to her that her child could become a doctor despite existing relationships with the existing doctor who supports that it's possible. For example, welfare in New Zealand appears to create more limitations than just economic or financial, as the child in this case would be funded into the career choice. On another level, we suspect parental preferences exist to either see their children not exceed parents' educational levels, or they wish to see their children also go into or onto WINS welfare to support the family. One of the other teenage children in the family already has a baby and is on welfare with an application for a state house. As stated, welfare in New Zealand seems to breed more welfare and behavioural consequences that maintain the low-income economy. And, let's not forget, maintain votes for leftist parties.
Well, that's telling, yeah. That wasn't actually what I was referring to. I was actually referring to the other guy that was the last caller. That was actually an email I think you were reading out.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah. So, but it's just about the guy talking about alternative energy. You know, he was talking about that thing with defined physics. Boy, I'd be interested to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that got my attention. But anyway, what I actually rang up about was to do with education, but not related to that. It just sort of caught me off guard. Have you ever heard of a thing called the Pareto distribution?
Not that I recall.
Not many have. It's only something I've discovered recently. It was actually in a video by Jordan Peterson. Boy, he's a gift that keeps on giving, that guy.
Well, if I get my way, we've made approaches today. He'll be on the program sometime.
You're going to talk about Kathy Newman?
Kathy Newman?
You've seen the Jordan Peterson versus Kathy Newman?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I did see the BBC.
Anyway.
The BBC interviewer.
Anyway, let's not get distracted. So, so back to the Pareto distribution. He's got a really good video on inequality. He goes into the Pareto distribution to do with why we've got inequality and stuff. Now, bear with me. This is related to education. So how the Pareto distribution works is that you take a certain number of individuals involved in any activity. Pareto distribution is all over the place. It's actually a natural law. And it basically proves that socialism and this whole equality thing can never, ever work. And the only way you can make it work is through coercion, you know. Like in North Korea, I'm sure the guy that's working on the performance of the rocket motor has probably got a gun to his head. So as much as he's got talent. But so what it is that, let's take farming. If you take 100 farmers and you square root that 100, you get 10. Those 10 most productive farmers will produce 50% of the outcome. That's the Pareto distribution. Mm-hmm. And I can apply it to everything. So you take, composers of music, like classicals. We only know really 10 famous ones, don't we? Well, they produced half the music.
Mm.
And then you take 1,000 songs that they produced, take the square root of that, which is about 33. That gets played 50% of the time. I could go on. It's just everywhere. So back to education. You will always have the Pareto distribution producing skewed results, and you can't do anything about it in the sense that you've got to let this law, you can try and close the gap of inequality. That's where I'm sort of saying that something needs to be done and we need to sort of try and lift up the bottom.
Yes.
Not try and push down the top. Let that do what it does. And this is the whole thing. We're trying to pull down the top to the lowest common denominator. Well, okay, rightio. You want to go back and live in mud huts and run around in grass skirts? That's what you'll be doing when you destroy that.
Well, as long as it's living in equal misery, everyone's happy.
That's a Winston Churchill quote, that one.
Yep.
Is it? The philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal share in misery. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Well done.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
How do you spell that, by the way?
I think it's P-E-R-A-T-O, but Google will do the spelling correction. He was is Italian in terms of by birth. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'll find it. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
It's what he referred to with regard to Kathy Newman. Very quickly, Mr. Producer's going to kill me in a second because I need to take a break, but as quick as I can. The author of what I'm about to quote you, does an introduction. When I speak with young people beginning their careers, I often tell them that in spite of the apparent formidableness of the adults around them, their mastery of office systems, their professional accomplishments, their sheer ability to last, almost everyone begins every day just trying to keep up their morale. Everyone's trying to be hopeful about themselves and the world. People are more confused, even defeated by life, than they let on. Many people, most, have times when they feel they lost the plot, the thread. So go forward, is the advice, with appropriate compassion. to this clip. This flashed through my mind when I saw the interview this week between British television journalist Cathy Newman and clinical psychologist and social philosopher Jordan Peterson. This is worth searching out, folks. Cathy Newman is probably all you need to type in, and you'll get, or Jordan Peterson if you want, you'll get it. It burned through the internet, in part because she was remarkably hostile and badgering. What gives you the right to say that? You're making vast generalisations. He seemed mildly taken aback, then rallied and wouldn't be pushed around. It was also interesting because she, the fiery, flame-haired aggressor, was so boring. Her thinking reflected all the predictable force-fed assumptions, while he, saying nothing revolutionary or even particularly fiery, was so interesting. When it was over, you wanted to hear more of him and less from her. News Talk to me 22 after 11. Shane, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Leighton. I'll kick it off by saying that sorry that you're going later in the year. It's been a pleasure listening to you.
It's a bit too soon for obituaries at this point.
Oh, maybe I'll call you back close to the thing. But anyway, regarding this leftist agenda, I guess you'd call it, are you aware at all of a documentary called The Red Pill?
Yes. I haven't seen it.
No, you can't see it in New Zealand. It's been banned.
No, it hasn't been banned, I don't think. It's just been denied theatre space. It did I believe it did get shown once or twice.
I tried watching it. I tried all the online ways of downloading and streaming movies, and it's been banned. Yeah, you can't get it. It was vote 116-5 to ban this by our politicians.
Where? In New Zealand, Wellington?
In New Zealand, yep.
I'm unaware of that.
Yeah. Like I say, I've tried every avenue to get it. I will get it. I'll end up buying it off eBay or something like that. But it has been banned in New Zealand. You cannot download it in any of the usual ways.
Well, there may be other reasons for that, but I'm struggling with the parliamentary vote thing. But
yeah, I googled it online. I really got my hackles up because it's another form of mind control. I mean, it's by its very nature, it goes against the leftist agenda because it supports. It's actually a fairly reasonable, even-handed documentary. I think it shows both sides, but it tends to give support to men's rights, which flies in the face of the feminist agenda, of course. But yeah, it's definitely been banned. Where did I read it? I read it on the internet. Yep, 116-5. They voted to ban it. So, yeah, I thought I'd better ring in and let you know that one. I tried Google Movies. I tried to get it on the Xbox. I tried everything, and you can't get it. I couldn't even.
All right. Well, let me have a look at the situation.
Yeah.
But I'm quite positive they didn't ban the movie, the film.
Oh, I'm quite positive they did, unless the page I read on the internet was lies. But the vote was 116-5. The cat guy, I can't think of his name just at the moment. He was one of the ones that voted not to ban it. But
he's not in Parliament.
No. Oh, hang on. Let me.
No, don't worry about it now.
Yeah.
I'll get something on it in a minute. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was pretty much it.
All right. Well, I'll report back to you shortly. Appreciate it. Thank you, Shane. News Talk to me 28 after 11. There are headlines that suggest such things. The red pill now illegal in New Zealand. The red pill banned in New Zealand. The red pill documentary, watch online. It is available on Amazon Prime, for instance. Somebody has written me. This is how not to do professional radio, but who cares? Let me go to Reddit. The red pill is now illegal in New Zealand. Feminism has long maintained that men's interests are entirely and always misogyny, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll report after the break. How's that? Cheers, 28 to 12. News Talks at me. Best I can make of it, because it's a bit messy. It's not straightforward. There's no, I can't find any media, as in, any of the newspapers covering this, but it was the 116-5 vote was about online commentary, sexist, racist, that sort of stuff. Gareth Hughes, the Green MP, the one who walked, no longer in Parliament, he walked. He had some standards. He voted against it, and he said it was far too broad, etc. Now, it appears to me that you can watch it if you want to. The Red Pill, the Cassie J documentary. Let's see what happens. Watch the trailer. See the Red Pill movie, where to buy, rent, stream, upcoming. I don't believe that Parliament banned the movie, but they made it difficult, undoubtedly, or it was made difficult by the bill that was passed to do with ist language, racist, sexist, whatever. That's the best that I can come up with at this particular point. And I'm not going to spend any more time on it right now. Except those who don't know about it I was invited to go see it, and I didn't. But it did have a showing or two. The Red Pill chronicles filmmaker Cassie J's journey following the mysterious and polarizing men's rights movement. The Red Pill explores today's gender war and asks the question, what is the future of gender equality? Let's ask another question. What is a man? What is a man? What do you mean, what is a man? Simple, he wears trousers. No. It's a question, and it's one that's being discussed in various places now. What is a man? And I mean discussed in relation to all the gender crap that's going on. 25 to 12, News Talks have been numbers 0800 80 1080. Now, from the family-owned fine wine delivery company, Constellation Drive on the Shore and Lunn Avenue in Mount Wellington, Jeff Poole, very good morning and welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, Leighton. It's nice to be back, and Happy New Year to you. Now, today, Fine Wine Delivery Co. are liquidating a premium grown and made Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc for $79 a dozen. So, yes, that's 12 bottles of premium Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc for $79. That's a phenomenal $6.58 a bottle.
No one can possibly be making any money out of this except the tax man. Premium grown, made in Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc for $79 a dozen is absurdly cheap. Why so?
Yes. Well, Corbyn's made this classy Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc exclusively for the premium restaurant trade. But during a change of brand ownership, the wine was never actually officially released. Now, the new owners inherited 3,000 dozen of this delicious premium Sauvignon Blanc, but it conflicted with other brand projects they already had in their portfolio. So they appointed Fine Wine Delivery Co. to conduct a nationwide liquidation. Now, given the brand is being retired, they're not mucking around here. It's ridiculously priced at $79 a dozen.
It is ridiculous. 2015 vintage, which was a good year in Marlborough, and I would presume are drinking very well, very nicely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Leighton. 2015 was an outstanding vintage in Marlborough. Fruit yields were down 30%, so concentration levels were dramatically up. It was a hot, long, dry vintage with less disease pressure requiring nominal use of vine sprays, of course. Corbyn's quality-focused vineyard management, combined with that outstanding vintage condition, has led to a Sauvignon Blanc with delicious flavours, lovely richness, and 2 years aging in the bottle has helped it and made it rounder, but it's still very, very succulent. It is drinking beautifully.
Okay, $79 for 12 bottles. $79 for 12 bottles. Sauvignon Blanc of the calibre that you're describing it, Jeff, is absurd. So after 20 years of us doing talking wine together, I have no doubts about your judgment. Or that of your highly experienced tasting panel, for that matter. 3,000 dozen. You've got all 3,000 dozen?
All 3,000 dozen, yes.
It's $79 a dozen.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's ridiculous. Look, but however, we did release stage one of the offer early January, and of course a lot of people had bought their festive season wine supplies and they were away on holidays, but even so, we sold 1,800 dozen in 7 days. Now that's unsurprising really, I guess. How often could you buy premium grown and made Sauvignon Blanc from an icon producer for $79 a dozen? And the answer, of course, is almost never.
Indeed. So what have you got? 1,200 left by my take.
That's right.
1,200 dozen, 1,200 dozen left of this final release. Now, we will need to be quick off the mark for this.
Certainly will. Even with the economies of scale a large quality brand like Corbyn's has, you know, I doubt they could have even made this 1902 Sauvignon Blanc for as little as $79 a dozen. Now, I recommend you can serve it in any company with supreme confidence, and here's a little tip. Wait until they're drinking it and complimenting you on your choice of wine, then just shock them with the price. $79 a dozen equates to $6.58 a bottle. Opportunities like this are phenomenally rare, so please, as Leighton says, get in quickly. The fastest and easiest way to secure your share of Corbyn's 1902 Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc for $79 a dozen is to log straight on to finewinedelivery.co.nz. Now, while the offer remains displayed on the front page, your order is absolutely guaranteed. Otherwise, phone 0800 Fine Wine, that's 0800 346 394, and if you can't get through, leave a message and we'll come back to you quickly to confirm your order. Or head, of course, straight to your nearest Fine Wine Delivery Co. Purple Superstore at either 42 Lun Ave, Mount Wellington, or 60 Constellation Drive on the North Shore, and taste it before you buy it.
All right, ridiculously priced. $79 a dozen. Corbyn's 1902, that's not the vintage. Premium Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, from the very, very good 2015 vintage at this ridiculous price. Now, shopping on finewinedelivery.co.nz, always the fastest way to complete your order. Otherwise, 0800 Fine Wine or 42 Lun Avenue, Mount Wellington, 60 Constellation Drive on the Shore to taste it first. That's the best deal you're going to do all year. Already out of the way. Let's see if you can top it. Anyway, Jeffrey, thank you. It is 20 to 12. News Talk ZB. 0800 80 1080. Email Leighton at newstalkzb.co.nz. Text 9292 from Eric. The red pill associated with child poverty. People must never lose sight of the fact that all of the destruction of the family and the repression of males in society took place in a parliament dominated by males. Men find themselves in an oppressive state as a result of the Clark governments, and those who champion this anti-male cabal are back again, with the Greens stating their intention to provide even more money to the women's ministry. Edifice designed to further discriminate against those who provide practically everything that women enjoy, which includes children. Question: did the new anti-child poverty initiative include the reintegration of the two-parent family, or just money to more easily replace men in the family? Eric, good on you. You keep it up. Noel, good morning.
I think you've rung me twice, and I haven't been able to answer it.
Hello? Are you talking to me?
Yes. How are you, Clayton? It's Noel from Hawke's Bay, sorry. Yeah, good to hear from you again.
How can I help you?
Just discussing the Bill English. I don't think it'll happen, Leighton. He's pretty rock solid in there. And I've heard bits and pieces of your program today.
Mm-hmm.
And the general feeling is, what Stephen Joyce said this morning, will remain. And I'd be very surprised if they were going to have meetings Thursday or Friday this week. And then...
Well, I think what we haven't really spent any time on this morning, but it was in Barry Soper's commentary earlier, is that the greater challenge is to the deputy leader of the National Party, and she will I would imagine she will go From my perspective, there's very little doubt of that. Whether Bill English stays there or wants to stay there is another matter. But I'm inclined to agree with you, to be honest. So there you go. Thank you, Noel. Appreciate it. 15 to 12. I've got two things I want to get through. One is a lengthy email to do with poverty, but from a good source. The other is this article that... Danielle, are you still listening? Are you? Because I've got what I was looking for, as I've mentioned, but it's a fair way down the track now. Let me hope that you are. Again, this goes back to Victoria, to Melbourne. The recent Victorian Liberals checklist certainly pinpoints some of the major deficiencies in the national school curriculum. Foremost is the mention of values, because the national curriculum was supposed to be based on values outlined in something called, ironically, the Melbourne Declaration. It stipulates in particular that moral and spiritual values should be paramount. But there's very little evidence of these or other values in the curriculum itself. Keep in mind that in Australia you've got the state system, and the states run the education system. The criticism regarding the absence of coverage of the history of Western civilization is also accurate. Indeed, there are whole slabs of Australian history missing. It is possible for a student to miss out on most of the key landmarks in the nation's history, given the vast degree of leeway given to schools and the very poor availability of resource material for teachers. No wonder so many Australians... And when I read something like this, I always relate it in my mind to here and make a mental comparison. So many Australians have no idea of the significance of Australia Day. I think that in New Zealand we all know about Waitangi Day and what that's about. And students did so badly in recent international tests regarding citizenship. Major inaccuracies and even biases exist in many strands. For example, the economics curriculum barely mentions the role of investment, innovation, or enterprise in the economy. Capitalism is portrayed as a disease rather than an economic system that can bring growth and wealth for all. Many teachers are anti-business, and the curriculum reinforces this prejudice. Australia was built on two fundamental pillars, a fair go and have a go. While the curriculum is saturated with the former, that is the fair go, you will find little reference to the latter. The author of all these faults is the inept and dysfunctional Australian Curriculum and Reporting Authority, which is a political body and not an educational one. Its governance sees federal and state politically appointed officials horse-trading over inclusion of topics. The result has been a lowest common denominator curriculum. It needs to be abolished and replaced by a body with true educational expertise. Universities also need more curriculum experts in their academic staff. We do not even, do not even have a centre of excellence in the school curriculum in Australia. But the Victorian Liberals, that is the Conservative Party, such as it is, would do better not to advocate withdrawal from the national system. Rather, they should champion its strengthening. We do not really want 9 statements of values across our nation, which stands proudly as the only federation with a national curriculum, nor do we want to create obstacles for families who move interstate. None of that matters to us, although it does matter to those who are moving to Australia. And there are plenty of Kiwis still moving to Australia. And my advice to anybody considering moving to Australia with kids in the school system is to pay very, very careful attention to where you're moving and how the system works and what they teach. Quite seriously. If you're thinking of going to Victoria, turn right. It's understandable that these issues have arisen so prominently in Victoria to the extent that Liberals, the political party, are still conservatives. Oh, I see. To the extent that they're still conservatives, it is natural they would be concerned at the recent actions of a state government that has given every appearance of downgrading and even ignoring the importance of religion, tolerating social engineering of school students, and smothering schools with political correctness. But the most important aspect of all of this is the emphasis on values. For some reason, Australians are very reluctant to discuss values. Are we reluctant to discuss them? I think so, actually. Perhaps this partly explains why the nation seems to be adrift in a sea of relativism whenever social issues arise. I was astounded recently, says the author, to have a group of science teachers of all people. And when I read this, it was published on the 26th, which was last Friday. When I read it, I was stunned when I got to this. I was astounded recently to have a group of science teachers of all people tell me that there is no such thing as absolute truth. Of course, our political leaders are largely to blame. They have become weather-vane creatures, shifting their position with every change in the wind direction. And their compasses point to magnetic north, not true north. And consider the impact of their dreadful behaviour in the foul House of Parliament, with all the name-calling, abuse and attacks, and so little attempt at compromise in the public interest. Australians are so alienated from political leaders because they do not know what absolute truths and beliefs they stand for. Reform can only come from the ground up. It will not be top-down. Same principle here, folks. Without grassroots pressure. In this battle, it is vital that parents take a much closer interest in what and how their schools are teaching and the foundations of the material they're using. Now, I had a man call me yesterday, Peter, talking about how parents didn't have a clue that there was religious education going on in a lot of schools. And their kids, he exaggerated dramatically the reaction, but nevertheless, he drew attention to the fact that parents didn't know that the kids were getting some religious education. My answer, because they can opt out, my answer is simple. Pay more bloody attention to what your kids are doing. It's your job. You're a parent. There's no excuse for anything else. We will have to do better than the recent episode where a parent was boasting. Here's the final paragraph. Carolyn, you'll love this. Recent episode where a parent was boasting that when the school conducted a reenactment of the arrival of the First Fleet, her son played the role of Captain Cook. When it was pointed out that Captain Cook was not part of the First Fleet, she replied, "Who cares? The kids had a great time and that's all that matters." Column was written by Emeritus Professor Kenneth Wiltshire of the University of Queensland Business School, who was co-chairman of the review of the national curriculum. Now, do I need to add any more after that last sentence? 2 + 2 = 4. But 5's acceptable because who cares? News talks to me, it's 5 to 11. I'm going to save that email to do with poverty until tomorrow because it's too long to deal with it appropriately now. So it's now on the clip. From Susan. This was earlier this morning. I'm sure this subject will raise its head shortly in this morning's show, so I'll get my 2 cents worth in now. It hasn't, actually. It could have, but it didn't. I do agree that racism is rampant. It ranges from the mispronunciation of names to the pushing of a minor culture onto a majority of students who are not of that culture. We have some friends with a European surname whose name is completely mangled each day and every day, despite the fact that the principal has a Germanic surname. One would have thought that their surname would have been pronounced as carefully as a Maori surname, but no effort is made by staff or management to accommodate this name. At every school event, there are extended wailing welcomes, prayers, speeches, haka, etc. This despite the fact that only 5% of the students identify as Maori. The 95% are made up of Pacific Islanders, Africans, Europeans, Indians and Asians. I'd call that racism, since the majority of students are not experiencing support for their culture. I'm sure I'll be a lone voice. I'm sure if I'd read this earlier, you wouldn't be. Other matter I wanted to mention quickly was that yesterday morning at 11:52 or something, I missed a call. Here is the number that I missed. 00, which means it comes from overseas. 00442200463013. I looked at it after the program and I thought, no, I don't know anybody with that number. There's no message. I'm not touching it. Yesterday afternoon, a little later, Mrs. Producer was rushing to get somewhere and her phone rang. She was waiting for 2 important calls. She missed the call, grabbed the phone out of a bag and pushed the number without giving it a moment's thought, because she didn't want to miss either of those calls and miss the people. As she did so, she realised, hang on, this is a number from supposedly the UK, and she didn't recognise it. It was, on comparing, a different number to the one that I just read to you. The scammers are back, folks. You get any of those calls, do not answer them, do not return them. And so there was a bit of panic that she might have overcooked her goose, but everything seems to be in order. So just a word of warning. The scammers are back. You answer the phone or you return the call and you've got some problems. And they'll be financial. We shall be back in the morning at 8:30. Till then, you have a great day and take care.
Thank you.